The only condition is that I want to discuss the whole situation with the 120 members of the Knesset and put the full picture and details of the situation from our point of view.
If you get that formal invitation, how soon are you prepared to go?
Really, I'm looking forward to fulfill this visit in the earliest time possible.
Would that could be, say, within a week?
You can say that, yes.
You said that you wish to address the Knesset, the parliament in Israel. Would you also,
that's right.
Would you also engage in substantive discussion?
I mean, exchange of views or so with Beijín, yes.
What about the opposition from some of your fellow leaders in the Arab world to this visit? They have expressed this to you, I gather.
I didn't tell any one of my colleagues, and I didn't ask them to agree or not agree upon this. I felt that my responsibility and my responsibility as President of Egypt also is to try all means to reach peace. And I took this decision. For sure, there are those who are against it. But as much as I am convinced that this is the right way and my people backs me, I shall be fulfilling the whole thing.
Has the PLO leader, Yasser Arafat, expressed any opinion on this visit to Premier Begin?
Not at all. Not at all, because as I told you, Walter, this is my initiative.
What is the ultimate that could result from such a meeting? What's the best you could hope for?
We are in a crucial moment. There has never been a suitable moment in the Arab world to reach genuine peace like we are now. So I want to put the facts before them. And at the same time, we want to discuss what will be the other alternative if we can't achieve peace. It will be horrible. Believe me, horrible.
You suggested that perhaps a Palestinian, now as a professor in an American university, might be a proper representative and solve this problem of who would represent the Palestinians at Geneva.
Right.
Now, you said that Yasser Arafat had agreed with that.
Yes.
However, now the information director for the PLO at the Tunis meeting of foreign ministers says the whole idea is absurd.
You know, we are accustomed to this in the Arab world, and I anticipated this. But you see, as I'm telling you, I'm quite calm. I'm just waiting for the proper invitation.
You must get something directly from Mr. Begin, not through the press.
Right, right.
And how would that be transmitted, sir, since you do not have diplomatic relations with Israel?
Why not through our mutual friend, the Americans?
And I will, during the week, ask my friend, the American ambassador to Israel, to find out in Cairo from his colleague the American ambassador to Egypt, whether he will be prepared to give us his good offices and transmit a letter from me to President Sadat, inviting him formally and cordially through the good offices of the United States to come to Jerusalem. Tomorrow I will make a statement in our parliament in the afternoon, and I think that immediately after the statement I will get in touch with Mr. Lewis, my good friend, the American ambassador, and so find out. What I can assure you, Mr. Cronkite, as we really want the visit of President Sadat, we really want to negotiate peace, to establish permanent peace in the Middle East, I will not hesitate to send such a letter.
Are there any preconditions? Are there any conditions under which you will be inviting him to?
No preconditions, and I understand that also President Sadat doesn't put forward any preconditions. He has got his position, we have our position. Let us sit together around the table and talk peace, and everybody will bring his position.
He hinted to me this morning that he thought it might be possible that he would be going to Israel if the invitation was forthcoming within a week or so. Do you think that's realistic?
Very good news. Well, if President Sadat is ready to come next week, if he tells me that he will come next week, I will have to postpone my trip to Britain, because I am supposed to go next Sunday to London at the invitation of Prime Minister Callahan. But I suppose that Prime Minister Callahan will also be agreeable rather to postpone that meeting for a week and rather have President Sadat in Jerusalem, because it gives hope to have peace in the Middle East. But if President Sadat would come after my return from Europe, I will come back home next Friday after my visit to London and to Geneva, and then he may come the other Monday. But anyhow, any time, any day he is prepared to come, I will receive him cordially at the airport, go together with him to Jerusalem, also present him to the Knesset, and let him make a speech to our parliament. I will follow him onto the platform, greet him, receive him. I think it's now up to President Sadat to carry out his, let me say, promise or bring into fruition his readiness to come to Jerusalem.
Tonight, an exclusive interview with a former CIA agent who was senior intelligence analyst of North Vietnamese strategy for the CIA in Saigon. He charges the U.S. government covered up the mishandling of the American evacuation from Saigon. In terms of squandered lives, blown secrets, and the betrayal of agents, friends, and collaborators, he says, the CIA's handling of the evacuation from Vietnam was an institutional disgrace. I asked him why this story has never been told before.
Well, there are many reasons, Mike, but one of the reasons, I think one of the primary reasons, is that it was such a shameful story that the administration, in particular the Ford administration, made a calculated effort to suppress it.
What you're saying is, in effect,
a cover-up.
The Ford administration, Secretary Kissinger,
the CIA Director Colby,
in order to prevent a tarnishing of CIA image, or
the administration's image as well. It was a concerted effort to suppress information on the collapse.
How do you know this?
Well, I was directly involved in it.
Tonight on 60 Minutes, that story, and the latest on the Sadat visit to Israel. I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Dan Rather. Morley Safer is on assignment. In a moment, those stories and more tonight on 60 Minutes.
This year, when you step out on the town, don't just drive. Take off in the 1978 Thunderbird. With its distinctive look and size, its Thunderbird quality and comfort. And it comes at a down-to-earth price of $58.08 with automatic transmission, power steering, power brakes, V8 and more. Flight test the 1978 Thunderbird. When America needs a better idea, Ford puts it on wheels.
The fine white wine grape French Colombard. Only through this special technique of cold fermentation do we fully capture its intriguing taste. Cold fermentation carefully slows the change from grape to wine. It is used by Ernest and Julio Gallo to protect the grape's natural flavor. If you enjoy fine white wine, taste the distinctive cold fermented French Colombard of Ernest and Julio Gallo.
We'll hear from the former CIA agent who has broken his oath of secrecy to talk about America's last days in Vietnam in a few minutes. But first, it was close to midnight tonight in Jerusalem, after one of the most dramatic days in the history of the State of Israel, that country's Prime Minister Menachem Begin and the President of Egypt, Anwar al-Sadat, sat down in the King David Hotel for a conversation with Walter Cronkite. Here is how it went.
President Sadat, were you pleased with your reception by the Knesset today?
Yes, I'm quite satisfied, really, and really I thank our friend Premier Beygen for making it possible for me to address the Israeli people through the Knesset.
You have had now 2 working sessions besides the more formal address to the Knesset today. Can you say whether you have come to any agreements as yet?
I think, Mr. Cronkite, we laid a foundation for a real and serious negotiation for the establishment of peace between our 2 countries and between other neighboring countries of Israel in the Middle East. This is perhaps the most important achievement of all. Tomorrow at the press conference we shall read out an agreed communique, and you will learn from it that there is a real achievement, first of all, of frankness, understanding, and the resolve to continue our talks and to establish peace, to go to Geneva, negotiate peace treaties, and ultimately sign them with all the neighboring Arab countries, first Egypt, but also all other neighbors. This is the real achievement of this momentous visit by President Sadat. As he was gracious enough to thank me, I would like to express my gratitude to him for his bold, courageous decision to come to us. And as I said just now at the table, that we appreciate very much the courage of his decision and It made it possible for us to achieve this basic foundation for the establishment of peace.
Well, I'm happy because in such a rather short time, I read on in the eyes and the hearts of all I met in the streets and here in the hotel, everywhere. Really, I read achievement in rather a short time, really.
I'm not sure I understood. You are going back into a working session now, tonight?
The President would like to see me tonight. Yes. After we finish our interview, we shall sit together and talk. This was the wish of the President. I must say he has had a very long day. And I'm sorry that I have to respond to the President. Because he asked me to, I will not refuse him. I can stay for as long as the President wishes.
This is just going to be between the two of you?
Yes.
Without your aides and so forth?
That's right.
Mr. Prime Minister, it sounded to me a moment ago as if you were describing the sort of communique that says you had friendly and useful talks, but does not spell out any specifics. Will there be any specific agreements in that communique?
The communique itself spells out the agreement to continue our dialogue. These are the words, to continue our dialogue, with the purpose to bring about the signing of peace treaties at the Geneva Peace Conference. It means that we want to go to Geneva. It should be properly prepared, and the President does want it. And then there, of course, there will be a negotiation. As you know, in Geneva, it's not a meeting between Egypt and Israel. It's a meeting with all our neighboring countries. We want all of them in Geneva. And you will hear it tomorrow, but it's a very positive statement. These are not, may I say, just phrases for us to say famous words, constructive talks, etc. They were good talks. We make progress. We understand each other now better. We understand that we should talk peace. We are resolved, as you heard, both the President and myself, not to have any more wars, no more bloodshed. We want peace, real peace, and that per se is a very great achievement. So,
this continuing of the dialogue, will you by any chance be visiting Egypt?
Here is my potential host.
We shall be discussing this tonight. After this meeting, we shall be discussing this.
Do you not feel that as favorable as your communique may be in saying that you reached this friendship between you, which is indeed a very big achievement, that there's going to be a letdown by your people, Mr. Beygen, and your people, Mr. Sadat, that you do not come back from this meeting to your people with something specific, something?
No, Mr. Clement, to the contrary. I think our people are elated. I accompanied the President today when we went to Yad Vashem, with which the President was very impressed, deeply moved. I don't have to say how I felt at the place. But we drove through Jerusalem for nearly 20-25 minutes. We saw thousands of people. I think they took President Sadat to their heart. And all over, you could have seen children with both flags, the Egyptian flag, the Israeli flag, waving to the President, and really proclaiming, we want peace with you. So our people still live in that spirit of elation. I don't think there will be any letdown.
You don't think the elation will be deflated by
There is no reason whatsoever. We shall continue our dialogue.
There will be trials from others to try and picture the whole thing as deflated. But my main concern really was to convey the message of my people to Israel.
What is the next step now toward getting to Geneva, now that you've come together in this friendly spirit? How do you get the rest of the countries together? How will you settle this matter of Palestinian representation?
I hope we shall be in touch And we shall continue the dialogue at any place, wherever the president decides and suggests to us.
Did you come to any agreement on Palestinian representation, the stumbling block to Geneva?
We may, yes. We shall discuss it.
We shall be having also President Carter with us.
Yes.
In the next phase.
Do you expect a meeting between the three of you with President Carter?
No. Contact. Yes, contact.
I've received today a very fine personal message from President Carter. I think also President Sadat will receive very soon a message. So we shall be in touch and continue. The key word is continuation, Mr. Cronkite. You can't solve all the problems in 24 hours.
No, and we can't explore all that you've talked on in public here on this broadcast, I'm sure. But if I could just press you one more moment on that one issue on Palestinian representation. Is your optimism about getting to Geneva based on any understanding between you about Palestinian representation?
I must make one correction with your permission. I always have to make it because this problem of terminology may create some misunderstanding. We should always speak about Palestinian Arabs because Palestine is the country in which there are two nationalities, and we recognize an Arab nationality and a Jewish nationality by law in the identity cards, recognized completely. So we should speak about Palestinian Arabs. We agree that they should be represented at the Geneva conference. And instead of speaking negatively, who not, may I say that we, I hope, can find a solution, a positive solution about who is going to be there to speak about the Palestinian Arabs. I hope so. We shall discuss it with President Sadat. If we are given a possibility and an opportunity, we would like to discuss it with everybody around.
Do you expect a hotline between Cairo and Jerusalem that you can talk back and forth on frequently?
I don't think we are hardliners. Ask my wife, she will tell you.
I think that's a pleasant note. Thank you very much.
Oh, Baraba, you know that today to President Sadat, a grandchild is born. May I use this happy occasion to congratulate him?
Thank you.
What did he celebrate today?
A grandchild was born to President Sadat.
8 o'clock in the morning.
We raise the glass to the happiness of the child.
Are you going to name the child Jerusalem? Perhaps Beigen?
It is a great problem because she is a girl, and then my wife would raise hell for everyone if it is not named after her name. You know this.
And my grandchildren asked me to ask President Sadat to give them his autograph. And the president was gracious to promise me to give autographs for my grandchildren.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you.
It doesn't fit. Oh! Yeah, excuse me, why are you delivering that?
That's how to get money for travel.
It's nice to say at the Barry.
This word of mouth advertising is brought to you by Stouffer's Pizza. Such fresh-tasting toppings, such a crispy French bread crust that people who try it have just one thing to say. There really is a good frozen pizza. Stouffer's.
For 7 years, he was a professional car thief. Lately, he has been assisting the Massachusetts authorities with his testimony. Since his retirement, the theft rate in Boston has dropped 14%. He says he is the reason.
Golda Meir, the person you call the old lady.
The old lady.
Could she do more than Menachem Begin to make peace?
I'm sorry to say yes.
Because?
Begin may be hurted by this, but Yes.
Joe Caldwell makes $3 an hour part-time in a clothing warehouse in Greensboro, North Carolina. 3 years ago, Joe Caldwell made almost $3,000 a night doing this. Caldwell says it's a blacklist by the old owners. The old owners deny it. One broke black athlete, trained to grab rebounds, hacking his way through a forest of legal problems.
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer.
I'm Dan Rather. In a moment, those stories and more tonight on 60 Minutes.
This portion of 60 Minutes is sponsored by Ford and your local Ford dealer, who invite you to see and test drive the 1978 Fords now. At Ford, the better ideas keep coming.
For the millions of people who need a full-size car, introducing the 1978 Ford LTD. If you need 6-passenger space, if you need a roomy trunk, if you want mileage like this, then the full-size 1978 Ford LTD could be just the car for you. LTD, a better idea from Ford.
The wedding's off. Oh, I invited 300 people?
Remember those times when everything depended on a phone call?
95.
Chances are the phone you depended on was made by Western Electric.
210.
Today, Western Electric still makes every telephone the same way, with Western Electric reliability, just like always.
300. The wedding's on.
For 95 years, America's depended on Bell telephones made by Western Electric.
When Palestinian terrorists from Yasser Arafat's Al-Fatah killed 37 Israelis yesterday, they struck a blow not just against Israel and Menachem Begin, but against Egypt and Anwar al-Sadat. For the PLO fears Sadat's peace initiative. They want no peace between Egypt and Israel. They don't want Sadat's 40 million Egyptians out of the fight against Israel. And they know that their attack yesterday will stiffen Begin's demand that there be no Palestinian state on Israel's border. But without that Palestinian state, Sadat himself has said, in effect, there can be no peace. We returned recently from Egypt, where we filmed a profile of Sadat on the eve of the publication of his surprisingly candid autobiography. We begin our film on the night of another terrorist attack a month ago. Sadat's good friend, editor Yusuf el-Sabai, had been shot down that day in Cyprus by Palestinians who thought he was pro-Israel. Sadat went to pray that night in the mosque of El Hussein. It was the anniversary of the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad. Security guards are scattered through the crowd of worshippers because the terrorists have sworn to kill everyone who went to Israel seeking peace, including President Sadat. The irony is that as a young man, Sadat himself had been imprisoned by the British occupiers of his country for complicity in a political assassination. During the 1940s, Sadat spent years, literally years, in prisons like this one on the outskirts of Cairo, in wet cells, damp cells, bug-infested cells. At one time, he spent 18 months in solitary confinement in a cell just like this one, 6 feet by 8 feet, a mat on the floor, armies of cockroaches inside, he said. It was called simply Cell 54. That cell no longer exists, but the memory of it has never left Sadat. In 1975, he personally struck the first blow with a pickaxe at the wall of a prison like the one in which he had been held. Cell 54. How bad was it?
Terrible. But I must say this. This has formed my inner resistance. Really, because I overcame this. The last 6 months, they were the most happiest time that I lived or will ever live.
Why?
Why? Well, in 2 places, you shall always find yourself, your real self. Number 1 is prison, number 2 is war.
Sadat was in Cell 54, as we said, for complicity in a political assassination. Earlier, the British occupiers had sent him to prison for helping 2 German spies in World War II. He saw the Germans, then battling the British in North Africa, as allies in his determination to rid Egypt of the British. In fact, says Sadat, he had long looked up to Germany and its leader. People write of you as a Nazi sympathizer.
Any young boy at that time, believe me, hailed Hitler because we didn't know, except that the man has returned the confidence to the German people after the defeat of the First World War.
It had nothing to do with his attitude about Jews.
At all. At that time, you know, the Jews were living with us, among us here. Some of them were ministers. All our economy was in their hands. We never knew this discrimination at all.
Yet in writing in his book about Egypt's returning the bodies of Israeli soldiers to Israel after the Yom Kippur War, Sadat says, applying the Jewish principle of putting a price on everything, the Israelis began to negotiate the price they expected to pay to recover their dead. When one reads, applying the Jewish principle of putting a price on everything, one says, aha, Anwar al-Sadat, he is anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish.
Anti-Semite, this is something that has been invented to blackmail anyone and to scare anyone. No. I myself am a Semite. How could I be anti-Semite? They are my cousins.
Some of those cousins turned up in Cairo recently. American rabbis from the Synagogue Council of America. They met with Sadat at his home, and though he told them he remained adamant that Israel give up all settlements in the Egyptian Sinai, the rabbis and their wives were obviously moved by their hour-long conversation with him. One of them, Rabbi Wolf Kelman of the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, told Sadat that what Pope John XXIII had done to bring Catholics and Jews together, Sadat was doing for Muslims and Jews.
The fact that we rabbis of the Jewish faith, sitting in what is really the palace of the pharaohs on the bank of the Nile, the place which is associated with the slavery of the Jews and also some glorious periods. That whole drama struck me at that second, and the parallel I thought it was Pope John. The only parallel I could think of.
To understand Sadat, says Sadat himself, you must go to the village where he was born, to Mit Abul Kum in the Nile Delta, a small green enclave in Egypt's sea of desert sand. But his roots go deep there.
You can't imagine the happiness whenever I think of it, not only visit it, whenever I think of it. As much as I remember always, whenever I open my eyes, I see the evergreen, vast areas.
Those vast green areas are in the eyes of the beholder, where only 4% of Egypt's land, and only along the shore of the Nile, is green.
Whenever you seek simplicity, that's happiness, it is in the village.
Sadat learned to read and write just like this, he says, on the bare floor of his village school studying the Quran. But when he was still a youngster, his father, a government clerk, moved the family to this house in Cairo. And it was there that the pattern of his later life began to form. This is the tomb of Gamal Abdel Nasser, who made Sadat his vice president. And strangely enough, their journey to power began just across the street in the Cairo Military Academy back in the 1930s. It was here that Nasser and Sadat and their fellow officers began to think about driving the British occupiers from their country. Sadat was one of the leaders of the revolution of 1952 that sent Egyptian King Farouk and later the British packing. But the real leader of the revolution, the man who ignited the nationalism of Arabs everywhere, was Gamal Abdel Nasser. They lionized Nasser when he nationalized the Suez Canal and when he promised to propel the Egyptian economy into the 20th century. He overpromised. Poor Nasser, you write. His whole life was consumed by hate and tantrums. He regarded every man with suspicion. True?
This was his habit, really. His nature was this. He was suspicious even when he was 19 years old. It is not a new.
And you say that none of the officials in his entourage paid any regard to the interest of Egypt. They wanted nothing but to remain in power, motivated by hate and jealousy. That's a sad indictment of the people who ran this country.
It was degrading, really. One day,
tapping phones,
concentration camps, all this.
And seizing private property in the name of state socialism.
The most degrading thing was any man wakes in the morning and finds himself nothing.
Wiped out.
Wiped out, completely. And sometimes also with the wiping out a concentration camp for him and his relatives and so.
How did you come to be known? Because people used to say, forgive me, Mr. President, I can say it now, but
please.
Nasser's poodle, Nasser's Mr. Yes, Yes, Anwar Sadat.
Whenever one starts to criticize him openly, he loses his temper completely. I know this because he was my friend since we were 19. So whenever there were anything to criticize, I used to do this between me and him, either at his home or in my home. But not openly.
No one expected you to survive. You know that.
I know, yes.
Everybody said, Nasser's poodle will last 6 weeks. And here he is.
4 to 6.
4 to 6 weeks.
Yes.
1973, the October War. Sadat sets out to avenge the defeat of 1967. His brother, a pilot, is killed in the first wave of the attack. The world's intelligence community is stunned as the Egyptians storm across the canal, breach Israel's invincible Bar-Lev line, and roll on into Sinai. Then comes an Israeli counteroffensive, sending hundreds of tanks westward across the canal. As most observers saw it, if a ceasefire had not finally been imposed, Israel might have annihilated Egypt's Third Army. But as Sadat tells it, it was the Egyptians who were stopped from wiping out the Israeli pocket of tanks and troops in Egypt only by the intervention of Henry Kissinger.
I told Henry, I can't afford to have them in this pocket. I told him, what is the position of the United States if I am going to liquidate this pocket? Immediately, he told me, I need not ask the Pentagon or the President. You will be hit by the Pentagon because we shall never permit the Russian arms to make victory again. You shall be hit by the Pentagon, and very severely.
And so you say that Israel was saved by,
the United States. By the United States.
The October War gave Egypt back its manhood.
Right. Quite right. Quite right.
Kissinger had no comment on Sadat's version of the events of 1973, and the Israelis scoff at his claim. But there can be no doubt it was Soviet arms that enabled Sadat and Egypt to hit Israel with such force. Yet Sadat turned on the Soviets. He says they failed to live up to their promises of military aid, and worse, they wanted too much control over Egypt's affairs. You say that they wanted to stab you in the back, too. They were waiting for you to fail in the October War, the Russians. They didn't believe that you could fight, and they were waiting until you were down to stick in the knife.
I was their best friend here, but I can't work as an agent, either for the Soviets or for anyone.
And they wanted you to be their agents in the Middle East?
Right, very simply like that.
Sadat insists that Egypt will wear no man's collar. Still, he wants aid for Egypt, billions of dollars worth from wherever he can get it, for the legacy he wants to leave his country. From his helicopter, he showed us miles and miles of desert with just the beginning of a settlement scattered here and there. He spoke of the way the United States opened up its West, your drive to the West, he called it. That is what he wants to do in Egypt. Where we saw sand, he sees small cities and green fields.
The city that we are going to see now, the 10th of Ramadan, is the first one. I'm planning for a chain of cities on this 100 kilometers. Factories. A chain of cities and factories. Pioneering, real pioneering.
But to do it, to help 40 million people overcome their staggering economic problems, he needs peace. You say, thank God no responsible Israeli can doubt the genuine intention of the Arabs to reach peace. And that is what I set out to do by going to Jerusalem. Arafat does not agree with you. Assad does not agree with you. Hussein of Jordan hangs back. Khalid the same. All Arabs. Who do you represent beside Sadat and Egypt?
I can count Khalid in this.
Saudi Arabia, you think?
Yes, but let me stop at Egypt and Sudan only. 60 million, 2/3 of the Arab world.
Will you truly resign if the peace effort were to fail?
Be sure, whenever I am proved wrong, I have the courage to go to my parliament and say, here is my resignation because I was wrong in this, so and so and so.
I understand you told Henry Kissinger when you were in the United States, Henry, if you and I were working on this peace process, we could settle within 3 weeks. Why? What's there in Henry Kissinger that he could? You did say it.
I did say it to Henry. It was not supposed to be declared like this because Cy Vance is my dear friend. He's an honest man, really. But very honest.
But Kissinger?
It is the approach.
He is more aggressive.
I can't add. I say this, he has got different approaches from those of Cy.
You seem to have respect, even a perverse kind of affection for Golda Meir, the person you call the old lady.
The old lady.
Could she do more than Menachem Begin to make peace?
I'm sorry to say yes.
Because?
Begin may be hurted by this, but yes.
Moshe Dayan, if he were prime minister.
Yes.
Is it possible that Menachem Begin, because he is Menachem Begin, because of his background, because of his family having been lost in the Holocaust, because of his commitment to his belief, is it possible that he just cannot make peace?
You remember that before I made my initiative, I visited with Ceausescu of Romania because Begin visited with him. And I know there is a close friendship between them, and there is a close friendship also between me and Ceausescu.
Yes.
I asked his view before I made my initiative. Ceausescu told me, the man is strong enough, the man is genuine for peace. I made my initiative after that.
Now, you have just seen Ceausescu again on your way back from the United States.
Right, right.
Has he changed his mind about Begin?
Not at all. I told him.
He still thinks?
I told him, here is the man that you told me about.
Yes.
Well, he told me, have some patience.
Everybody is telling you have some patience.
Right, right. In all languages. Patience en français.
Yes.
Patience in English. Geduld in German. There is a German proverb that says, Geduld bringt Rosen. The patience brings roses.
You believe that?
Yes. Yes.
But while Sadat practices patience, without doubt Palestinian guerrillas are planning more attacks inside Israel and conceivably inside Sadat's Egypt.
Want a high-mileage rated car in your garage?
We've got ideas about good mileage, ideas for having fun, ideas to really think about, ideas for everyone.
There are peppy little Pintos. roomy Fairmonts, sporty Mustangs, and front-wheel drive Fiestas. Altogether, 19 models with high mileage ratings to choose from at your Ford dealer.
At Ford dealers, the better ideas keep coming.
Sunday on All in the Family, everyone's under one roof again, and things aren't going at all well.
Once and for all, you stop calling my husband a meathead.
Then on Alice, Vera locks everyone in Mel's storeroom on a holiday weekend. And Carol Burnett welcomes special guests James Garner, George Carlin, and Ken Berry to an hour of great entertainment on the Carol Burnett Show. The fun starts Sunday at 9, 8 Central and Mountain.
Look out for the car thief. He's in $1 billion business. It's the costliest single crime in the United States. While the number of auto thefts per year hovers around the 1 million mark, fewer and fewer of those stolen cars are recovered. About a third are never seen again. Not too long ago, far and away, most of the cars stolen in this country were taken by joyriders or casual thieves spotting an easy target. Today, a large percentage of car thievery is by professionals who steal cars for profit. No one seems to know exactly why, but the car theft capital of America is Boston.
Part of the problem was this man. We'll call him Bill. For 7 years, he was a professional car thief. Lately, he has been assisting the Massachusetts authorities with his testimony. Since his retirement, the theft rate in Boston has dropped 14%. He says he is the reason. We asked him to show us a few of his tricks, beginning with a simple entry into our locked car. Once in the car, he might find documents that he can use to have a duplicate key made. Once he has the key, the car is his.
How many cars did you say you'd stolen over a lifetime?
Oh, I would say 700, 800, 900 cars. I never kept count.
Is this a standard tool in stealing cars?
Yes, it is.
Where do you get this kind of thing?
It can be purchased for about $8 through the AAA.
You gotta be kidding.
No. You usually have to show an identification that you're a police officer, which I have.
How he got a hold of a police ID, he wouldn't say.
Take me the full way through. I come to you.
Okay.
I say, I'd like to have a 1978 Cadillac Seville. Can you do it for me?
Sure.
Tell me how you would do it and how the whole arrangement would work.
First of all, price. We would agree on a price.
What would be a fair price as far as you're concerned for that?
$1,500.
To me?
Yep.
And then what happens?
Then I would go out and spot a Cadillac.
Where would be the best place for you to spot it?
Either at the airport or at a hotel garage. And preferably an out-of-state car.
So now you're looking for a 1978 Cadillac Seville with out-of-state license plates on it?
Right.
This particular Cadillac Seville belongs to WNAC, the CBS television affiliate in Boston. All Bill needs is the license number. And he's off to make a phone call to a government computer room.
76 Cadillac. I call.
Okay, identification number, please?
And I give a code.
6S.
And I get the name, the address.
69.
The identification number of the car. Color. Where it was purchased.
6Q.
It requires a code to plug yourself into the computer, in effect.
Right.
How do you get that code?
Through officials that I know.
You pay for it?
Again, yes.
Bribery.
Armed with that information, Bill calls the dealer who sold the car. It's not difficult to find out the name of the dealer. It's on the back of almost every car.
Call the dealership, identifying myself again as a police officer. Telling him, say, that I have Mr. Rather here at a motel in New Jersey. And as I approached the car, I saw Mr. Rather trying to get into his car. The keys were locked in the ignition. He has told me that he bought the car from you people. He has no identification on him whatsoever, and I'm about to arrest him. Could you verify that Mr. Rather purchased this car from you? Well, of course, I already know this. So they look it up. Oh, yes, sir, they all go. He did buy the car from us. I said, well, we're going to arrest him because we really don't know it's him. He says his identification is in the glove compartment, but the keys are in ignition. The door is locked. Do you have any way that we can get into the car without breaking a window? And they usually come back, oh, yes, sir, we have key numbers. I said, well, what are they? I play dumb. And he gives them to me. I said, well, thank you very much.
And once with a key number?
And I hang up. I go to any locksmith or any General Motors dealership if it happens to be a General Motors car, give them the numbers, and I got keys.
Getting key numbers from a dealer should not work this easily. And after this report, perhaps dealers will be more alert. But there are many other ways of getting keys. If this is true, what is to prevent, say, a parking attendant, when he parks my car at a garage or parking lot, from simply looking on the key, taking down the number, and being able to steal my car that night?
It happens all the time. Very simple.
Happens all the time?
Yeah.
All right, you've got the 78 Cadillac. You've got it out of the airport parking lot. Now what do you do with it?
I take it to a garage that I had, take the plates off, change the identification number, make up a bill of sale, and deliver the automobile.
Now, who wanted the stolen cars?
Legitimate people, believe it or not.
Describe for me a typical customer.
Typical customer? Family man, 2, 3 kids, working for $200 a week.
Were all of your customers satisfied?
No, not all of them.
What were some of the complaints?
They paid too much for it. They get cold feet after 2 or 3 weeks. They're going to turn you in if you don't give them the money back.
What would you say to those who said to you, I'm going to turn you in if you don't give me my money back?
The next morning, they wouldn't have their car.
What do you mean?
I would take the car back.
Openly repossess it or steal it back?
Just steal it right back.
Did you ever do that?
Yes, half a dozen cases. It was either them or me.
In 1973, when Massachusetts and other states made their title laws a little tougher, Bill changed his methods. He shifted over into the fastest growing segment of the auto theft business. The stealing of cars for the sole purpose of cutting them up for untraceable parts. It's a little like kidnapping a person for a kidney transplant. In illegal operations, perfectly healthy stolen cars are treated like these wrecks. The difference is that all their parts are in perfect condition. The parts that are marked with identification numbers, they are crushed and sold for scrap. Those parts with no identification numbers, doors, hoods, fenders, grills, can all be sold to parts dealers and never traced back to the stolen car.
The sheet metal parts of an automobile today are quite valuable. New parts are very expensive. For example, a typical automobile, it would probably cost about $18,000 to $20,000 just to buy the parts without any labor.
So if you built the car from the ground up in a repair shop, $18,000 to $20,000?
Just for the parts.
Pete Ingham of State Farm Insurance was talking about new parts. We asked Joe Americo of Sawmill Auto Wrecking in New York to tell us about used parts.
Now, if you wanted to take and break this car up for parts to sell it, used parts. Now, I broke that down the other day, and I think we came up with approximately $4,000 or $4,100, something like that. That if we sold this here complete front off the car, we'd get probably $1,500. You sell the back part of it, you get another, I guess, $1,200 or something like that. And a door could be worth as much as $250 or $300.
Joe bought that car from an insurance company. Not all wreckers or auto body shops get their cars that way.
You start off first with an auto body shop that's crooked. He hires me. I need another 78 Cadillac. I go out and steal one. He pays me $500. He then will transfer the hood, the fenders, the grill, the bumper, which are not marked with identification numbers.